All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children. Men will die for their wives and children, and God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts, the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendis est. Amoral Traitors. Gold Digging, Monkey Branching, and War Brides, written by Conrad Riker. Available now. Links in description. Fliston, the user wants a single viral Substack title and subtitle separated by exactly 1 colon in the whole output. Title under 8 words, subtitle under 24 words. Sell the woke dictionary term untenably inclusive accountability and its plain English debunking. Output only the title and subtitle. Right, I found it on page 47 of a university HR handbook, nestled between ethical storytelling and restorative circle practice, quiet as a well-camouflaged trapdoor, untenably inclusive accountability. Say it aloud. Hear how the syllables arrive wearing the garments of compassion inclusive, because who could oppose inclusion? Accountability, because who could be against responsibility? The phrase arrives pre-sanctified, polished by committee, approved by 3 working groups, and a consultant paid 6 figures to make the unbearable sound administrative. You are meant to read it and feel virtuous for nodding. You are meant to feel relief that someone is finally taking responsibility seriously. That relief is the bait. Now translate it into plain English and watch the architecture invert. You are guilty if she feels bad. You must pay for her feelings regardless of facts, and no evidence can discharge your debt. Notice the sleight of hand, the word accountability, which once required proof of fault, now requires only the presence of a feeling. The word inclusive, which once meant welcoming diverse opinions, now means accepting every subjective interpretation as binding law. And untenably, that exquisite adverb admits what it conceals, that the standard cannot be held, cannot be defended, cannot be met. It is not a standard at all. It is a revenue stream for grievance, dressed in the vocabulary of care. It converts every disagreement into a debt, and every apology into a confession extracted from the accused before the trial begins. Here is the diagnostic question every man must learn to ask the moment this phrase enters the room. If the standard of accountability is your feelings and your feelings change, who is the judge of those feelings, you or the institution that profits from your grievance? Watch the silence that follows. That silence is the sound of a word being unmasked. Because untenably inclusive accountability is not compassion. It is not care. It is a bureaucratic mechanism by which institutions extract resources, apologies, reputations, careers, compliance from men and traditional structures by defining harm subjectively, making defense impossible, and calling surrender justice. The compassionate mask is the weapon. The institution behind the mask is the hand, and the hand never rests. Lexicon entry. Untenably inclusive accountability. Adjectival noun phrase. Bureaucratic status. A state of institutional liability where the burden of proof is inverted, requiring the accuser's emotional discomfort to be treated as objective harm, thereby rendering traditional evidence insufficient to discharge moral duty. Woke definition: the systemic condition wherein dominant groups are held responsible not merely for their actions, but for the subjective interpretation of those actions by marginalized subjects. Accountability is untenably inclusive because it expands the circle of liability to include unspoken intent, historical resonance, and the mere presence of privilege in the room, making it impossible to stand tenure one's ground without violating the inclusive standard of feeling. Plain English: you are guilty if she feels bad, even if you did nothing wrong, and you must pay for her feelings until she stops feeling bad, regardless of the facts. Institutional function: it serves as a falsifier refusal mechanism for institutions. By making accountability untenably inclusive, the institution can never be proven wrong, because the metric of success, the accuser's satisfaction, is fluid and subjective. It allows HR and university administrations to punish men or traditional structures without needing to prove fault, only presence and potential for offense. It converts a legal dispute into a therapeutic one, where the goal is not justice, but the restoration of the emotional equilibrium of the powerful common uses. HR departments disciplining men for tone rather than action. Universities revoking degrees or honors based on community impact rather than academic merit. Corporate DEE statements that demand accountability for systemic issues without specifying individual culpability. Social media cancel culture where context is stripped and the vibe of the offense determines the punishment. Questions that puncture it: if I did exactly what the rule said, but you still felt hurt, am I accountable? Who defines what hurt is, you or the institution that pays you? If accountability is untenably inclusive, can it ever be tenably exclusive? If so, why is exclusion bad? Does my intent matter if your feeling is the only truth? If I apologize for something I didn't do, have I been accountable or just compliant? Encyclopedia notes: entry: untenably inclusive accountability. Part of speech: adjectival noun phrase, bureaucratic status weapon, pronunciation evinent to me, inclusive contability definition. Short definition: a condition of institutional liability where the burden of proof is inverted, requiring the accuser's emotional discomfort to be treated as objective harm, thereby rendering traditional evidence insufficient to discharge moral duty. Woke definition, translated from the original newspeak: the systemic condition wherein dominant groups are held responsible not merely for their actions, but for the subjective interpretation of those actions by marginalized subjects. Accountability is untenably inclusive because it expands the circle of liability to include unspoken intent, historical resonance, and the mere presence of privilege in the room, making it impossible to stand tenure one's ground without violating the inclusive standard of feeling. Plain English translation: you are guilty if she feels bad, even if you did nothing wrong, and you must pay for her feelings until she stops feeling bad, which she won't, because the payment is the point. Etymology: from untenable, unable to be held or defended, plus inclusive, expanding the scope of grievance indefinitely, plus accountability, the mechanism of punishment. The word tenable comes from the Latin tenere, meaning to hold. Something tenable can be gripped, stood upon, defended. Untenable means no ground exists beneath your feet. The suffix minusly converts the adjective into an adverbial mode. Now it describes how the standard operates. It operates unholdably. You cannot grip it because it has no shape. Inclusive derives from in plus claudere, to shut. Literally to shut within. The inclusive circle is still a circle. It has walls. It shuts people in and shuts others out. The joke is in the word itself. Inclusion requires exclusion. The only question is who gets excluded. Under woke grammar, the answer is always you. Accountability comes from the Latin computa, to calculate, to count. An account is a reckoning. To be accountable was once to have your deeds counted, weighed against evidence, measured against a standard. Now the counting has been replaced by the crying. The ledger is gone. The therapist's couch is the new courtroom. The full phrase, untenably inclusive accountability, was forged in the late 2010s within HR departments and university DEI bureaucracies. It describes the shift from did you break a rule to did you disrupt the vibe? It fuses the legal concept of strict liability, you're responsible regardless of intent, with the therapeutic concept of emotional validity, her feelings are facts. The result is a weapon that requires no bullet. The accusation is the conviction. Institutional function. Untenably inclusive accountability is a falsifier refusal mechanism. By making the standard of harm subjective and unfalsifiable, the institution guarantees it can never be proven wrong. The metric of success is the accuser's satisfaction, which is fluid, shifting, and strategically maintained at unsatisfied to preserve leverage. It allows HR departments, university administrations, and corporate compliance officers to punish men without proving fault. Only presence, only potential for offense. It converts a legal dispute into a therapeutic one where the goal is not justice, but the restoration of the emotional equilibrium of whoever holds institutional favor. In practice, a woman complains, the man is summoned. He asks what he did. The answer is, it's not about what you did, it's about how she felt. He asks what would fix it. The answer is, that's not something we can specify. He asks if there's evidence. The answer is, her experience is the evidence. He asks for a lawyer. The answer is, this isn't a legal proceeding. He asks if he can leave. The answer is, that would be a pattern of disregard. The trap closes. The word untenably does the work. There is no ground to stand on. There is no defense, because there is no charge. There is no charge, because there is no rule. There is no rule, because the rule is, she must feel better, and she decides when that is. Hidden premises, strip the rhetoric. What must be true for this concept to function? Subjective feeling is a higher form of truth than objective fact. If this is false, the entire standard collapses into hysteria. Men are naturally aggressive, women are naturally sensitive. Any conflict is therefore male aggression by default. This is a patriarchal assumption the woke movement never abandoned. It simply inverted the moral valence. The status quo is inherently oppressive, so any deviation from progressive demands is automatically justice. This is circular. The proof that the system is oppressive is that it resists progressive demands. The proof that progressive demands are correct is that the system is oppressive. Silence is complicity. Inaction is action. This obliterates the distinction between doing and failing to do, making every man guilty of everything he didn't prevent. The accuser has epistemic authority over the accused. Her interpretation of events is privileged. His interpretation is evidence of his guilt. This is a Kafka trap. To deny the accusation is to prove the accusation. Every one of these premises is either unfalsifiable, circular, or a category error. The architecture cannot survive scrutiny. That is why scrutiny is forbidden. That is why the word exists, to make scrutiny feel like violence. The three axes of manipulation. Axis I, moral status inflation definition, converting a policy preference into a badge of purity. By labeling a standard inclusive, the institution elevates it above debate. To challenge the standard is not to argue policy. It is to reject inclusion itself. You are not disagreeing with a rule. You are excommunicating yourself from the moral community. Fallacy, equivocation. Inclusive shifts from welcoming diverse views to accepting all subjective interpretations as binding. The first is a virtue. The second is tyranny. The equivocation between them is the entire trick. Plain test. If I agree with the outcome but reject the reasoning, am I still inclusive? If not, the word doesn't mean what you say it means. Axis to way. The equivocation engine definition. Switching meanings between moral, legal, therapeutic, and bureaucratic registers without signaling the shift. In a courtroom, accountability means proof of fault, due process, cross-examination. In HR, it means apology and training. The phrase untenably inclusive accountability lets the accuser demand the therapeutic outcome, your submission, while wielding the legal weight of the word accountability to enforce it. She gets the gun of law without the burden of proof. Fallacy. Category error. Treating emotional harm as legal liability. These are different domains with different standards. Conflating them is either stupid or strategic. It is strategic. Plain test. What evidence would make you admit I was right, even if you still felt hurt? If the answer is nothing, this isn't accountability, it's a shakedown. Axis 3. Victim rank credentialing definition. Treating asserted grievance as authority over facts. The more untenable the accuser's position, i.e., the less factual support it has, the more inclusive the institution must be to validate it. The weakness of the claim is covered by the breadth of the definition. She doesn't need evidence because she has rank. Her identity, her feelings, her discomfort are the evidence. Fallacy ad hominem reverse. The strength of the argument is derived from the identity of the speaker, not the logic of the claim. Listen to marginalized voices becomes obey whatever the self-appointed victim says. These are not the same. Plain test. Does your identity make the claim true, or does evidence? If identity alone suffices, then a conflicting identity claim cancels yours, and we're back to evidence, which you said you didn't need. Common institutional uses. HR departments disciplining men for tone rather than action. A woman objects to how a man said something, not what he said. How? The content is irrelevant. The vibration is the offense. The man is reprimanded. The woman is offered counseling. The cycle repeats. Universities revoking degrees or honors based on community impact rather than academic merit. A professor cites data. Students feel harmed. The data doesn't matter. The feeling does. The professor is investigated. The students are affirmed. The data remains true. The professor remains punished. Corporate DEI statements demanding accountability for systemic issues without specifying individual culpability. Translation: you are guilty because you exist in a system we dislike, and you will pay until the system is replaced with one we control. Cancel culture, digital Maoism, social media mob strips context from a statement, frames it in the worst possible light, and punishes based on the vibe of the offense. The original meaning is irrelevant. The performance of outrage is the trial. The deletion of the target is the verdict. Fallacies embedded in the term, unfalsifiability. The standard is always moving because feelings are always changing. No victory is final. No acquittal is permanent. You can be re-accused for the same act by a different person on a different day with a different feeling. Circular definition: you are accountable because you are privileged. You are privileged because you are accountable. The loop never opens. There is no exit condition. Psychologizing disagreement. Intellectual dissent is recoded as emotional abuse. I disagree with your claim becomes you are harming me. The argument dies. The therapy session begins. Moral blackmail. If you were truly inclusive, you would accept my interpretation. This converts every demand into a loyalty test. Refusal proves guilt. Compliance proves nothing. You'll be tested again tomorrow. Contradictions. The concept devours itself. It demands inclusion of all voices, but excludes anyone who rejects the prevailing emotional narrative. It claims to be accountable to facts, but prioritizes feelings over facts. It seeks to decenter the dominant group, but centers the dominant group's guilt as the primary metric of social health. Without the villain, the hero has no story. The woke machine needs the oppressor to exist. It manufactures him when he doesn't. Socratic questions to be asked aloud slowly in the meeting. If I did exactly what the rule said, but you still felt hurt, am I accountable? Who defines what hurt is? You or the institution that pays you. If accountability is untenably inclusive, can it ever be tenably exclusive? If so, why is exclusion bad? Does my intent matter if your feeling is the only truth? If I apologize for something I didn't do, have I been accountable or just compliant? Can you name one action I could take that would fully discharge my accountability? If not, is this accountability or a permanent debt? If two people feel opposite things about the same event, whose feeling wins? And what criterion other than feeling do you use to decide? Ask these calmly. Let the silence do the work. The system cannot answer them because the answers would expose the machinery. Counter definition. Untenably inclusive accountability, true definition, a bureaucratic mechanism where the powerful extract resources, apologies, money, status, silence, submission, from the weak by defining harm subjectively, making defense impossible, and making compliance the only rational choice. It is extortion with a therapy bill. Detonating question. If the standard of accountability is based on your feelings and your feelings change, who is the judge of your feelings, you or the institution that benefits from your grievance? Sit with that. The answer is the whole game. Field note: the conference room exorcism. The following is a composite of real patterns observed across corporate, academic, and institutional settings. Names and details have been altered. The structure has not. Setting: a mid-sized tech company. Conference room: Tuesday. Fluorescent light. A man we'll call Marcus, senior engineer, 12 years of clean record. 0 complaints, is seated across from 2 HR representatives and a mediator hired from an outside DEI consultancy. The complaint, a female colleague, Jen, reported that Marcus made her feel unsafe during a code review. The evidence: there is none. No recording, no witnesses, no prior complaints, no specific statement identified. When asked what he said, Jen reportedly answered, "It wasn't what he said, it was the energy." The meeting, HR Rep 1, "Marcus, we want to make this a productive conversation." Translation: "We have already decided you are the problem. This conversation is the performance of fairness before the sentence. Marcus, I'm happy to cooperate. Can you tell me what I'm being accused of specifically?" HR Rep 2, "This isn't about accusation, it's about impact." Note the shift. Accusation requires evidence. Impact requires only assertion. The word impact is doing the work of proof without the inconvenience of proof. Marcus, "What did I impact? What was the harm?" Mediator: "Jen experienced a feeling of unsafety during your interaction." Marcus: "What did I do that caused the feeling?" Mediator: "That's not something we can specify." The feeling is what matters. Here it is, the kernel, the entire apparatus in one sentence. He asked for cause. They gave him effect. He asked for fact. They gave him feeling. He is expected to answer for a charge that has no content, to defend against an accusation that has no shape. Marcus: "If I don't know what I did, how can I correct it?" HR Rep 1, "This is a learning opportunity. We'd like you to complete a sensitivity module and write a reflection." Reflection: not a legal statement, not an admission, a reflection. A confessional document that will be filed, stored, and produced at the next complaint as evidence of a pattern. He writes it, and he has a record. He refuses, and he has an attitude problem. The trap has 2 doors. Both open downward. Marcus, am I allowed to have representation? HR Rep 2, "This is an internal process, not a legal one." Translation: "You have no rights because we say this isn't the system that grants rights. We have all the power because we say this isn't the system that limits power. The formlessness is the weapon." Marcus, "Can I see the complaint?" Mediator, "We need to protect the psychological safety of the complainant." Psychological safety, a phrase that means her comfort outranks your due process. Notice the asymmetry. His career is at risk. Her comfort is the standard. He is transparent, she is anonymous. He must change. She must be affirmed. Marcus, after a long pause, "I'd like to ask one question. If I complete the module, write the reflection, and adjust my behavior, is there anything else I need to do to resolve this?" HR Rep 1, "We'll reassess after the process is complete." We'll reassess. The goalpost just grew legs. There is no finish line. There is no acquittal. There is only temporary compliance pending the next accusation. That is what untenably inclusive means. You cannot stand, you cannot hold, you can only kneel post-mortem. Marcus completed the module. He wrote the reflection, he adjusted his tone. He stopped speaking in meetings unless directly addressed. He stopped mentoring junior engineers. He stopped volunteering for projects where he'd interact with female colleagues. He didn't get a promotion that cycle. His manager cited soft skills feedback. Jen filed another complaint 6 months later against a different man for a different energy. The cycle resumed with a new target. The system worked exactly as designed. The male response: rules of engagement, define before you obey. If they cannot tell you what you did in specific terms with evidence, there is no charge. There is only a demand. Separate harm from offense. Harm requires demonstrable injury. Offense requires only assertion. They are not the same. Do not let them collapse the distinction. Refuse collective guilt. You are not responsible for systemic anything. You are responsible for your actions. If they cannot name your action, they have nothing. Demand falsifiability. Ask, what would prove I was right? If the answer is nothing, the process is not accountability. It is theater. Document everything in writing, time-stamped. If the process is informal, your records are the only due process you have. Never supplicate, apologize for what you did wrong, specifically, narrowly, honestly. Do not apologize for what you didn't do to make someone's feelings go away. Apologies extracted under duress are confessions, not virtues. Watch the behavior, not the words. A just institution names the charge, presents evidence, allows defense, and specifies the remedy. An unjust institution speaks in fog, demands reflection, and moves the goalposts. If you see fog, you are not in a proceeding. You are in a ritual. Exit when the system cannot be reformed. Some institutions are not worth saving. Some are designed to consume you. A man who stays in a rigged game because he hopes the rules will change is not patient. He is prey. Maxim. Accountability without specificity is tyranny. Inclusion without boundary is conquest. A standard that cannot be met is not a standard. It is a sentence. Final detonation. Untenably inclusive accountability is not a mistake. It is not a well-intentioned policy gone too far. It is a precision instrument designed to make dissent impossible by making defense illegitimate. It replaces the rule of law with the rule of mood. It replaces evidence with epistemic privilege. It replaces the examined life with the accused life. It is, in the precise classical sense, illegitimate. It lacks the ligament, the binding tie that connects authority to justice. It is power untethered from truth. It is the bureaucracy's dream and the citizen's cage. Name it, expose it, refuse it. And when they ask why you won't participate in the process, ask them the one question they cannot answer. If your standard requires no evidence, permits no defense, and admits no exoneration, what exactly separates your accountability from a mob? Let the silence answer, debunking the term. What the word pretends to mean. Language is the first battlefield. Before an idea can be imposed, a vocabulary must be captured. Untenably inclusive accountability arrives wearing the garments of justice. The word accountability carries the gravity of a courtroom. The word inclusive radiates the warmth of hospitality. And the adverb untenably, awkward, bureaucratic, deliberately ugly, camouflages itself as technical precision. Together, they form a phrase that sounds like a policy memo and operates like a guillotine. Pretend, meaning first. The phrase presents itself as an expanded standard of moral responsibility. It claims to address the reality that traditional accountability mechanisms, evidence, procedure, intent, fault are too narrow to capture the full range of harm that powerful actors inflict on vulnerable ones. It gestures toward a more complete justice, one that takes seriously the subjective experience of the injured party, that refuses to let the powerful hide behind procedural technicalities, that insists harm is real even when it leaves no visible mark. This is the bait, the mote, the moderate, defensible claim that suffering matters, that power blinds, that institutions should listen to grievances with care. Nobody disputes that suffering matters. The classical tradition from Aristotle's eudaimonia to Aquinas' Justitia to the common law's audi alterum partem has always taken injury seriously. The question is never whether harm deserves attention. The question is what counts as harm, who decides, and what proof is required. Those questions are precisely what untenably inclusive accountability is designed to foreclose. The phrase pretends to widen the circle of justice. It narrows the circle of the provable, what the word actually does. Unpack the grammar. The word tenable comes from the Latin tenor, to hold. Something tenable can be gripped, stood upon, defended in open argument. Untenable means no ground exists beneath your feet. The suffix -sply converts the adjective into an adverbial mode. It describes how the standard operates. It operates unholdably. You cannot grip it because it has no shape. It cannot be examined because it has no edges. Inclusive derives from in plus clauderie, to shut. Literally, to shut within. The inclusive circle is still a circle. It has walls, it shuts people in, and shuts others out. The joke is embedded in the etymology. Inclusion requires exclusion. The only question is who gets excluded. Under the grammar of this term, the answer is always the same: the accused, the male, the dissenter. The one whose presence alone is sufficient trigger. Accountability comes from the Latin computer to calculate, to count. An account is a reckoning. To be accountable was once to have your deeds counted, weighed against evidence, measured against a standard, tested against a rule known in advance. The reckoning has been replaced by the crying. The ledger is gone. The therapist's couch is the new courtroom. What does the phrase actually do? It inverts the burden of proof. It replaces the question, did you do something wrong, with did your existence cause a feeling? It replaces the standard of evidence with the standard of mood. It makes defense impossible because it makes the charge ungraspable. You cannot defend yourself against a feeling you did not cause, cannot predict, and cannot cure, because the cure, the accuser's satisfaction, is strategically withheld. This is not a procedural innovation. It is an ontological revolution. It declares that subjective feeling is the primary substance of moral reality, and that objective fact is a secondary, suspect category. The tool of the powerful, the camouflage of privilege, the alibi of the oppressor. It does not argue for this position, it presumes it, and it demands you presume it too, or be named the enemy. The phrase does what all tyrannical language does. It makes dissent indistinguishable from guilt. The premise is hidden inside it. Every ideological term smuggles premises. Strip the rhetoric. What must be true for untenably inclusive accountability to function? Premise 1. Subjective feeling is a higher epistemic authority than objective fact. If a woman says she was harmed, she was harmed. If the evidence contradicts her, the evidence is the problem. This is the doctrine of standpoint, epistemology, the Foucauldian claim that knowledge is inseparable from power and that the marginalized possess a privileged access to truth that the powerful structurally cannot see. The accuser's lived experience is treated as private revelation, a secular burning bush that cannot be cross-examined without committing sacrilege. But this premise refutes itself. If all knowledge is power-laden and no perspective is neutral, then the standpoint epistemologist's own claim is also power-laden and non-neutral. The weapon dissolves in its own acid. If feeling is truth, then the accused's feeling of being unjustly targeted is also truth. The premise cannot be applied selectively without special pleading, which is precisely how it is always applied. Premise 2. Men are naturally aggressive. Women are naturally sensitive. Notice the patriarchal foundation buried beneath the progressive paint. The entire apparatus assumes a sexed asymmetry. Male presence is dangerous by default. Female grievance is credible by default. This is not new, it is the Victorian pedestal repainted. The Victorian gentleman was told that a woman's word was sacred because she was morally superior. The modern HR officer is told the same thing, except now it's called centering marginalized voices. The assumption is that any conflict between a man and a woman is, by definition, male aggression encountering female vulnerability. This erases female agency, female cruelty, female manipulation, and female culpability. It reduces women to emotional weather systems incapable of lying, incapable of scheming, incapable of weaponizing their tears. This is not respect. It is infantilization dressed as reverence. And it is the foundation of every gynocentric legal and institutional regime from family court to Title IX. Premise 3. The status quo is inherently oppressive. So any deviation from progressive demands is automatically justice. This is pure Marcuse, repressive tolerance repackaged. The system is oppressive by definition. Therefore, any challenge to the system is liberating by definition. Therefore, any resistance to the challenge is repression by definition. The logic is perfectly circular. The proof that the system is oppressive is that it resists progressive demands. The proof that progressive demands are correct is that the system is oppressive. No evidence can break this circle because the circle defines what counts as evidence. The accused who presents exonerating facts is using privilege to silence. The institution that demands due process is replicating carceral logic. The standard is a Kafka trap. Innocence is evidence of guilt, because only the guilty would need to defend themselves. Premise 4. Silence is complicity. Inaction is action. This premise converts non-participation into offense. If you did not speak, you contributed to the harm. If you did not act, you enabled the abuser. This is collective guilt, the doctrine that every member of a category is responsible for every act of every other member simply by belonging. It is the logic of the blood feud, the vendetta, the pogrom. It has no place in a civilization governed by law, and yet it is the foundation of untenably inclusive accountability. The phrase demands not merely that you refrain from wrongdoing, but that you actively validate the accuser's interpretation of reality. Refusal to validate is itself harm. Disagreement is itself violence. The word complicity does the heavy lifting. It stretches from you participated to you existed nearby. Premise 5. The accuser has epistemic authority over the accused. This is the deepest premise and the most dangerous. It inverts the basic requirement of public reason, that claims be testable by any rational agent. Under untenably inclusive accountability, the accuser's identity confers authority that the accused's identity cannot access. The accuser knows, the accused denies, the accuser feels, the accused rationalizes. The accuser's testimony is evidence, the accused's testimony is mansplaining. This is not epistemology, it is theology. The accuser is a priest, the accused is a heretic. The proceeding is not a trial, it is an auto da fe, the fallacies that keep it alive. An ideology survives not by truth but by fallacy. Untenably inclusive accountability is sustained by a precise constellation of logical errors, each one common, each one lethal when institutionalized. Unfalsifiability. What observation would make the accuser say she was wrong? What evidence would discharge the accused's liability? The answer is none. The standard is defined by the accuser's emotional state, which is private, shifting, and strategically maintained and unsatisfied. Karl Popper identified unfalsifiability as the hallmark of pseudoscience. It is also the hallmark of pseudo-justice. A standard that cannot be met is not a standard. It is a sentence, equivocation. The phrase slides between three meanings of accountability: legal, proof of fault; therapeutic, restoration of emotional equilibrium; and political, public confession of complicity in systemic oppression. In court, accountability requires evidence. In HR, it requires an apology. In the court of public opinion, it requires ritual self-criticism. Untenably inclusive accountability demands the weight of the legal meaning while operating under the standard of the therapeutic one. You are punished as if convicted, but tried as if in therapy. Category error. Emotional discomfort is recategorized as objective harm. Hurt feelings are treated as injuries. Discomfort is equated with danger. This collapses the fundamental distinction between offense and harm, between what wounds the body or property and what wounds the ego. The legal tradition has always maintained this distinction. Untenably inclusive accountability erases it deliberately, because without the erasure, the concept has no teeth. Circular definition. You are accountable because you are privileged. You are privileged because you are accountable. The system defines privilege as the inability to escape accountability, and accountability as the mechanism for addressing privilege. The circularity is not a bug. It is the engine. It produces perpetual motion. The accused can never stop being guilty, because guilt is defined by the category, not the conduct. Moral blackmail. If you were truly inclusive, you would accept my interpretation. The phrase operates as a loyalty test. Acceptance proves virtue, rejection proves bigotry. There is no middle ground, no honest disagreement, no good faith skepticism. The accused is offered one option: confess. Everything else is evidence of guilt. Kafka trap. The structure is a perfect Kafka trap. Denial is evidence of guilt. Fragility. Anger is evidence of guilt. Aggression. Questions are evidence of guilt. Sealioning. Silence is evidence of guilt. Complicity. Apology is evidence of guilt. Confession. There is no exit. The trap is designed to make the act of existing, while male, while traditional, while skeptical, the offense itself, mote and bailey. The moti. We should take all harm seriously and listen to marginalized voices. Who could disagree? The Bailey, your subjective feeling of harm constitutes subjective proof, requires no evidence, admits no defense, and demands public punishment. The phrase lives in the Bailey but retreats to the moat when challenged. The trick is to make the radical claim using the vocabulary of the moderate one. The institution that benefits, follow the money, follow the power. Who gains from a standard that requires no evidence, admits no defense, and can never be satisfied. HR departments, the human resources bureaucracy is the primary beneficiary. Untenably inclusive accountability gives HR permanent jurisdiction over every interpersonal interaction in the workplace. No longer limited to enforcing written policies against documented violations, HR now policies tone, vibe, presence, and potential for offense. This is not a bug, it is institutional empire building. Every complaint generates a process. Every process generates a file. Every file justifies a larger staff, a bigger budget, a broader mandate. HR does not exist to protect employees. HR exists to protect the institution from liability, and untenably inclusive accountability is the perfect liability shield, because it makes the institution responsive to every complaint without requiring the institution to judge any complaint. The institution simply defers to the accuser's feelings, punishes the accused, and declares itself accountable. The cost is borne by the accused, the benefit accrues to the bureaucracy. University administrations, Title I Inc.'s offices, DEI commissars, student conduct boards, all thrive under the new standard. A campus where every hurt feeling is a Title IX violation is a campus that needs an ever-expanding Title IX office. The administration gains power over faculty speech, student conduct, curriculum content, and institutional culture. Due process is recast as re-traumatization, evidence is recast as oppression, the administrative state grows. The therapeutic industrial complex, therapists, counselors, trauma-informed consultants, restorative justice facilitators, all feed on the expansion of harm into subjective territory. If harm requires evidence, the expert is a lawyer. If harm requires only a feeling, the expert is a therapist. The redefinition of accountability as emotional restoration creates a permanent market for therapeutic intervention in every institutional dispute. The political left, untenably inclusive accountability is a mechanism of political control. It silences dissent by recoding disagreement as harm. It delegitimizes opposition by recoding the opponent as dangerous. It makes conservative, traditional, or even liberal left arguments unsayable, not because they are refuted, but because the act of making them is defined as violence. This is Marcuse's repressive tolerance in operational form, tolerance for the approved, repression for everyone else. Women, strategically, this must be said plainly. The standard disproportionately benefits women in institutional settings, because women are the primary claimants of emotional harm and the primary beneficiaries of the belief that female grievance is inherently credible. This is not because women are liars. It is because the institutional incentive structure rewards grievance and punishes stoicism. A woman who complains receives validation, resources, and power. A man who complains receives suspicion, mockery, and dismissal. The system selects for female accusation and male silence. This is gynocentrism translated into bureaucratic grammar. The old chivalric code said, a gentleman defends a woman's honor. The new HR code says, a gentleman confesses to whatever a woman accuses him. The vocabulary has changed. The power dynamic has not. The plain English translation: strip the jargon, strip the therapy speak, strip the bureaucratic camouflage. Here is what untenably inclusive accountability means. You are guilty if she feels bad, even if you did nothing wrong, and you must pay for her feelings until she stops feeling bad, which she won't, because the payment is the point. That is the entire concept. Everything else, the lived experience, the systemic conditions, the historical resonance, the disruption of inclusive environments, is rhetorical smoke. The mechanism is simple. Subjective feeling is weaponized as objective fact. The accused is stripped of defense, and the institution extracts compliance under the guise of justice. The phrase untenably inclusive is the tell. It admits in its own name that the standard cannot be held, it cannot be examined, it cannot be met. It is designed to be unmeetable because a standard that can never be satisfied is a leash that can never be removed. The Socratic cross-examination. The question is the cleanest weapon. It leaves no bruise, it draws no blood, but it opens the opponent's position to the air, and the position rots in the daylight, to the accuser. If I did exactly what the rules said, but you still felt hurt, am I accountable? Who defines what hurt means, you or the institution that pays you? If your feeling is the only evidence and your feeling changes, was the original charge true, false, or unfalsifiable? If accountability is untenably inclusive, can it ever be tenably exclusive? If so, why is exclusion bad? Does my intent matter if your feeling is the only truth? If I apologize for something I didn't do, have I been accountable or just compliant? Can you name a single action I could take that would fully discharge my accountability to you? If you cannot name one, is this a standard or a sentence? If a man made the same complaint against you, with the same lack of evidence, would you accept the same standard? If not, what separates your accountability from a double standard? Does feeling harmed prove harm occurred? Have you ever felt harmed by something that on reflection was not harmful? If feelings can be wrong, why are yours exempt from that possibility? What would you say if I told you that your accusation made me feel unsafe? Does my feeling of unsafety obligate you to leave the room, the institution, your job? If not, why does your feeling of unsafety obligate me? Is it possible that two people can experience the same event differently and both be sincere and neither be guilty? If so, why does the institution choose your experience as the authoritative one? Is it because you are more credible or because you are more useful to the institution? What written policy did the accused violate? If no written policy was violated, what is the legal basis for discipline? If the basis is community impact, who measures impact and by what metric? If the metric is the accuser's satisfaction and the accuser refuses to be satisfied, what terminates the process? Does the accused have the right to see the evidence against him? Does the accused have the right to confront the accuser? Does the accused have the right to legal representation? If the answer to any of these is no, what separates this proceeding from a star chamber? Has the institution ever found a complaint to be unfounded? If so, what percentage? If the percentage is near zero, does that indicate a fair process or a rubber stamp? What training does the institution provide to help men avoid triggering complaints? What training does the institution provide to help women distinguish between harm and offense? If the answer to the second question is none, does the institution believe women are incapable of self-examination? Is that respect or infantilization? When the institution says it takes all complaints seriously, does it also take all defenses seriously? If the institution's budget for complaint processing grew 300% in 5 years, is that a sign of success or of empire building? Who profits from a standard that can never be satisfied? Does the institution have a financial incentive to expand the definition of harm? If the institution dissolved its DEI office tomorrow, would harm increase or would complaints? Are those the same thing? The counter definition defined the term honestly. Without the camouflage, untenably inclusive accountability is a bureaucratic mechanism whereby institutional power holders extract compliance, confession, and resources from the accused by defining harm subjectively, inverting the burden of proof, and rendering defense illegitimate. It replaces the rule of law with the rule of mood. It replaces evidence with epistemic privilege. It replaces the examined life with the accused life. It is not justice. It is not accountability. It is not inclusion. It is a weapon disguised as a virtue, a precision instrument designed to make dissent impossible by making defense forbidden. It lacks the ligament, the binding tie that connects authority to justice. It is power untethered from truth. It is the bureaucrat's dream in the citizen's cage, final detonation. If your standard requires no evidence, permits no defense, and admits no exoneration, what exactly separates your accountability from a mob field guide? Term under dissection. Untenably inclusive accountability, the bureaucratic weapon that convicts you of her feelings. What it means in plain English, you are guilty if she feels bad, even if you did nothing wrong, and you must pay for her feelings until she stops feeling bad regardless of the facts. How to use this guide. Carry it. When the phrase appears in an HR meeting, a university conduct hearing, a DEI training, a relationship argument, a social media pylon, identify the move being made against you. Then deploy the Socratic question. One question, cleanly placed, collapses the entire apparatus. Card 1, the impact trap. Cue, you will hear. We are holding you accountable for your impact, not your intent. Hidden move, they have shifted the standard of guilt from what you did to how someone felt about what you did. This eliminates intent, context, and evidence in one stroke. You are no longer judged by action but by reaction, and reactions are infinite, unmeasurable, and unfalsifiable. Plain English translation, we cannot prove you did anything wrong, so we are redefining wrong as whatever upset someone. Since someone is always upset, you are always guilty. Socratic question, if impact is the only standard, and my impact is determined entirely by your interpretation, what action could I ever take that would be guaranteed innocent? Card 2, the moving wall. Cue, you will hear, accountability must be inclusive of all lived experiences. Hidden move, the standard expands to include every subjective interpretation as evidence. Inclusive here does not mean welcoming all views. It means accepting all feelings as fact. Because feelings are infinite and contradictory, the standard can never be satisfied. You are perpetually in debt. Plain English translation, the rules change depending on who is in the room and how they feel that day. You can never stand your ground because the ground itself is defined by whoever complains loudest. Socratic question, if accountability is untenably inclusive, can it ever be tenably exclusive? And if exclusion is always wrong, how do you exclude my interpretation of events? Card 3, the tone veto. Cue, you will hear. Your tone is harmful and you need to be accountable for that. Hidden move, they have converted speech style into moral offense. Tone is subjective, unfalsifiable, and conveniently unavailable for measurement. It cannot be cross-examined. The accusation is the evidence. Your calm becomes cold. Your precision becomes aggressive. Your silence becomes violence. Plain English translation, I don't like how you said that, so you are wrong. And if you say nothing, you are also wrong. The only acceptable response is agreement. Socratic question, if I use the most measured tone possible and you still feel harmed, is the problem my tone or your inability to tolerate disagreement? Card 4, the silence trap. Cue, you will hear, silence is complicity. Your refusal to speak is itself a form of harm. Hidden move, they have eliminated the right to remain neutral, observant, or silent. Inaction is reclassified as action. By this logic, you are guilty for what you did not say, which means you are guilty for what you did not think, since unspoken thoughts can be inferred and assigned. Plain English translation, you must publicly agree with me or you are my enemy. Neutrality is not allowed. Privacy is not allowed. Your conscience belongs to the committee. Socratic question, if silence is violence, is compelled speech justice? By what standard do you require me to speak your beliefs rather than my own? Card 5, the self-refuting inclusion. Cue, you will hear, if you were truly inclusive, you would accept my interpretation without question. Hidden move, inclusive, has been equivocated from welcoming diverse views to accepting my subjective truth as supreme. Inclusion now means exclusion of any perspective that challenges the accuser's emotional narrative. The word has been inverted into its opposite. Plain English translation. Inclusion means everyone agrees with me. If you disagree, you are excluded in the name of inclusion. Socratic question, does inclusion include the right to disagree with your definition of inclusion? If not, isn't your inclusion just exclusion wearing a mask? Card 6, the defense prohibition. Cue, you will hear, the fact that you are defending yourself shows you are not truly accountable. Hidden move, they have made self-defense evidence of guilt. Any clarification, correction, or presentation of facts is reclassified as resistance to accountability. The only acceptable response is total submission, confession, apology, and silence. This is not justice. It is a struggle session. Plain English translation, if you argue, you are guilty of arguing. If you present evidence, you are guilty of deflecting. If you ask questions, you are guilty of weaponizing inquiry. The only way to prove your innocence is to confess your guilt. Socratic question: if I apologize for something I did not do, am I being accountable or am I being compliant under coercion? What is the difference between accountability and a forced confession? Card 7, the bureaucratic extortion. Q, you will hear, we need to create a culture of accountability and ensure you meet the community standard. Hidden move. The phrase community standard is invoked without defining the community, the standard, or how it was established. It is a phantom authority, a fabricated consensus used to intimidate. The institution positions itself as the arbiter of a standard it invented, then charges you with violating it. Plain English translation: a bureaucracy you did not elect, using a standard it did not publish, has decided you owe a debt you cannot measure to a community that was never consulted. Socratic question: who specifically defines this community standard? Was it voted on? Is it written? Can you show me where I agreed to it? Card 8, the emotional sovereignty climb. Q, you will hear, my lived experience is my truth, and you must be accountable to it. Hidden move, lived experience has been elevated above evidence, logic, and public reason. The accuser claims epistemic sovereignty. Her experience is unchallengeable. Her interpretation is final, and your role is to validate. This is not accountability. It is worship, the demand that you treat her feelings as revelation. Plain English translation: I am the judge, jury, and evidence. My feelings are the law. Your job is to obey. Socratic question: if your lived experience is your truth, and my lived experience contradicts it, by what standard do we decide whose truth prevails, or is truth itself now a popularity contest? Operating doctrine. The architecture of the trap, untenably inclusive accountability, is designed so that compliance is indistinguishable from confession and defense is indistinguishable from guilt. The term itself is a weapon, not a concept. It exists to make you unable to stand your ground by redefining the ground as harm. The countermeasure: one question asked calmly, repeated if necessary, refusing to be moved until it is answered. The principle: you are not obligated to validate a subjective interpretation of reality presented as moral law. You are obligated to the truth, and the truth does not require anyone's permission to exist. Final maxim: define before you obey. A question is a sword with a clean conscience. False certainty fears examples. The unexamined slogan becomes a cage. Final test. I have spent this essay handing you the chisel, not the sermon. Every term they deploy, whether something as baroque as untenably inclusive accountability or as common as safety, is a load-bearing wall in a prison built from your compliance. The architect never wants you to see the blueprints. He wants you flinching at the sound of the words before you've even asked what they mean. Stop flinching, start cutting. Here is your one rule, carried like a blade. Define before you obey. Translate the term into plain English. Say out loud what it actually means. Then audit the incentives. Who gains power the moment you accept the definition? Finally, ask the detonating question. If the standard of harm is her feeling, and her feeling changes by Tuesday, who is the judge of that feeling, she, or the institution that profits from manufacturing her grievance? Ask it once, ask it calmly, then watch the wall crack. Sponsored book: Amoral Traitors, Gold Digging, Monkey Branching, and War Brides. I was raised by a man who believed in duty, honor, and silence when it was called for. My father never complained. He worked, paid his taxes, protected his family, and expected nothing in return but respect. I watched him get destroyed by a system that no longer rewards that kind of man, a system that now mocks him. I watched my mother leave him not because he failed, but because he succeeded too quietly. She wanted drama. She wanted attention. She wanted a man who would grovel, apologize for existing, and fund her emotional roller coaster. When he refused, she labeled him cold, toxic, and abandoned him for a younger man who promised fireworks. That was my first lesson. Loyalty is punished. Truth is silenced. And women are not victims. They are the architects of the betrayal. This book is not for the weak. It's not for the woman who wants to feel good about herself while destroying men. It's not for the man who still believes communication will fix a woman who has already decided to leave. This is for the man who has been lied to, cheated on, financially gutted, emotionally abused, and called a monster for daring to expect basic decency. This is for the man who sees the world collapsing, universities overrun with hysterics, corporations run by DEI commissars, families shattered by divorce, and children raised by screens and state, and knows something is deeply wrong. This book will tell you exactly what it is. Leftism isn't an ideology, it's a psychological infection. It spreads through shame, tears, victim signaling, and collectivist hysteria. All behaviors hardwired into the female psyche when motherhood is repressed and replaced with power, consumerism, and emotional chaos. Every leftist slogan, equity, inclusion, safe spaces, believe women, is a manipulation tactic disguised as morality. These are not ideas, they are weapons. And they are wielded by women not because they're evil, but because they're psychologically undeveloped, emotionally dependent, and biologically driven to seek security through infantilization, theirs and society's. You will learn how women use gossip, tears, and social exclusion to control men and silence truth. You will see how the maternal instinct, when denied its natural outlet, mutates into collectivism, socialism, and state dependency. You will understand why women are not mothers anymore. They are mother archetypes in revolt, projecting their own arrested development onto culture, demanding protection, care, and endless validation while refusing responsibility. You will learn how female suffrage has turned democracy into a consumerist carnival, where votes are bought with entitlements and men are taxed into oblivion to fund female whims. This book is for the red-pilled man who is done lying to himself. The man who has read the Greeks, studied the Bible, respects logic and reason, and knows that civilization is built on sacrifice, not sentiment. It's for the man who sees the war on fatherhood, the collapse of marriage, the rise of female narcissism, and the destruction of the Western canon, and refuses to stay silent. If you are that man, this book will arm you with the truth. If you are not, if you believe in equality, healing, dialogue, or any of the other leftist lies, close this book now. Go watch a Netflix series. Buy a latte. Do yoga. Anything but read these pages. Because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. And the truth will not comfort you, it will enrage you, and then if you're a real man, it will mobilize you. Amoral Traitors, Gold Digging, Monkey Branching, and War Brides. Written by Conrad Riker. Buy now, links in description.